Welcome to the latest in our Move to Spain Virtual Roadshow webinar series. Today's webinar is about buying property in Spain, as well as many of you have indicated you intend to rent before you buy. We'll also cover renting in Spain. We'll start off by looking at how you can find your dream home in Spain. And as you're probably aware, we have webinars tomorrow and the next day that will be looking at the most popular areas in Spain for expats. And we'll cover more about how to find a home, the attractions in different areas and the current state of the market in those sessions. So we'll then cover financing a purchase with a mortgage, a Spanish mortgage, how to manage the foreign exchange risks if you're using funding from the UK or elsewhere, rather than funds already in euros. We'll then look at the buying process in Spain and how it differs from what you may be used to in the UK. So we're joined by Joanne Alderton of Aldertons, property finders and relocation support, provide relocation support. So we're here to answer any questions you may have, so please submit any questions using the function on your screen. We'll answer any that we can during the session, and any that we miss out, we can answer by email later. If you're watching it while a recording of this webinar, then submit your questions to expats@expatnetwork.com and I'll answer those questions or find someone who can. Okay, let's start off with Joanne, introducing Joanne Alderton. Perhaps you could tell us a bit about yourself and about Aldertons and the areas that you cover.
Hi Nigel, hi everybody. My name's Jo Alderton and I own Aldertons of Spain. We are a relocation support agency and property finding agency. We established our company 7-8 years ago now in the northern Costa Blanca region of Spain. I myself have been out here in Spain since 1995, but I have been a bit of a gypsy and lived all over the world. I was a previous management in tour operators for many years. So I have lived in Cuba, in Mexico, Sri Lanka, Goa, lots and lots of places all over the world, including every island in Spain and most of the costas of Spain as well. So I do know pretty much the whole of Spain. So I am the person to talk to with that. I have a team of 8 working for me over here, and we are qualified in immigration. So we know exactly what visas and residency applications that we need to take in order to get you settled over here and within the parameters of the law. So we are definitely the right people to be speaking to in order to help you settle and move yourselves over here.
Okay, thanks, Joe. So let's start off by looking at how you find the property in Spain. There's obviously lots of portals and so on. How does finding a property in Spain differ from what people might be used to with estate agents, etc., in the UK?
Well, the first thing to get across is that a state agency in Spain compared to the UK is a very different ballgame. First and foremost is that real estate or estate agency is not a regulated profession in Spain. So anybody can set up as an estate agent. That means that one day they can be a plumber, the next day they can just start selling houses. And you as Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, coming over to Spain, start talking to someone, they can seem very credible, they can seem very knowledgeable about this area, but in reality they really don't know, and their own experience is fabulous of how they did it, but it can be very wrong, and you can be getting the wrong advice. So you need really to be making sure that you're taking the advice from the correct people. So yeah, it's an unregulated industry, so you really do need to be careful about what you're doing and who you're taking the advice from. The second thing is that what you're used to in the UK is going on Rightmove or going on Prime Location or Zoopla or something like that and looking at the properties. And generally 90% of the time you've got an idea of the locations that you're looking at. Over here, it's very different. Estate agents in the UK tend to have the sole listing. So they will be the only people that are listing that property, or purple bricks these days. So even property owners list their own properties. Over here, every agent may have that property. So you'll be looking at the property and 7 or 8 different agents may have that property, or one agent has it but farms it out to 15 or 20 other agents. So you can be looking at a property, but it might have 7 or 8 other agents have it with different photos, different prices. It might have sold 6 months ago and it hasn't been taken down with these other agents. So you can be looking at it, excited to go and see it, and it's already sold. So you need somebody on the ground with their eyes and ears there to actually be guiding you through the process.
Okay. And you provide property finding services rather than acting as an estate agent. So
Yeah.
how does that differ? Just to give people an idea.
We act on behalf of the buyer as opposed to being on behalf of the seller. So we don't list properties. We actually work on behalf of the people who are looking for the property. So that person that is on the ground with the feet on the ground over here, we know every nook and cranny, we know every street. We know every side of the hill, so what side gets the sun, what side doesn't get the sun, where the barking dogs are, even down to which trees have got the birds that sing early doors in the morning, so you don't want the house that's right next door to that. So it's the nuances of the areas that you're looking in, the things the estate agents don't tell you.
Okay. and you don't just sell them the house, but you help them through the whole process. So.
Yeah, so our primary job is relocation. Or to help you and assist you to purchase the correct property for whatever your aim is. So if you're not planning on moving out here full time, we will assist you in getting the right visa or tourist license for the property. So whatever you want to do with that property, that's our aim, is to ensure that it's the right property for your goal. So if you're planning on making a profit out of that property and renting it out, then we'll make sure that it's a property that you can obtain the tourist license on. If you're using it just as your own holiday home, for example, we'll be the key managers for that property and make sure that, as you can see at the moment, it's quite a dull day over here and we've had rain. We'll be the people that will go out and check that it's secure and that there's been no leaks in the property, make sure the gardeners are doing what they're being paid to do, etc. So it's a full hand-holding process.
Okay. And just to say that Joanne's area is the northern Costa Blanca and the Marina Alta area. We have other partners who will do similar services for you down in Costa del Sol and in the Murcia, southern Costa Alicante area. So Costa Blanca. So I guess Brexit and the travel restrictions that we've all been under for the pandemic have had a big impact on the market in Spain. What is the sort of current state of the market? Is there plenty of properties and prices moving? What do you expect to happen over the coming months?
There's been a massive change in the market in Spain, pretty much like what's been happening in the UK and the rest of Europe, well, worldwide actually. So historically, or certainly as long as I've been working in this market over here, it's been pretty much a buyer's market. But in the last 4 to 6 months, the pendulum has swung from there to there, and we are absolutely in a seller's market now. So as fast as things are coming on the market, they're selling. So you need to be on the ground in order to put the offer in on places. I've never ever known the market like it is here at the moment. The apathy that people were having, or the lento, it's called in Spanish, which is the calmness that people were saying, oh, we'll come over in 4 months' time and we're going to put our list together, and oh, it's been on the market for a year. That's not happening anymore. Things are selling. Things that have been on the market for 2-3 years have all sold.
Okay, and is that being reflected in prices, as far as you think? Prices
have risen, very definitely. Prices are holding. The things that were overpriced are now selling. And they're getting the asking price. Some things are still taking a little bit of a negotiation. The negotiations may be 2 or 3% off as opposed to the 10% that people were getting previously. Certainly on new builds, there's no negotiation at all happening on those, of my experience in the last few weeks. You may be lucky if you get a dishwasher thrown in or something like that. On resales at the moment, what we're tending to find is that people are negotiating more on terms. So we're finding that we can negotiate if there's a mortgage. They're negotiating on the length of that, how long it's taking to actually complete on the mortgage and get you 10% down, things like that. So, but with regards to prices off, it's becoming tighter and tighter and tighter.
Yeah, I mean, I know from discussions I've had with different agents in different parts of Spain, yeah. One of the factors that seems to be occurring is that there are a lot of Dutch, Belgian and Germans moving across here, and people tend to think that Spain will suffer because of the loss of British buyers, but and the British buyers are coming back. But it is those Belgians and things. As one friend who's married, a friend who is a property agent who's married to a Dutch partner, said he can't believe there's any Dutch people left in Holland because
there's hardly any.
There's so many cars.
Yeah. The Dutch and the Belgians are massive buyers at the moment. Currently out this week at the moment. We're working with Norwegians. We have Dutch clients here at the moment. We are doing video tours for some British clients, and we also have 2 lots of American clients here as well. So we are working internationally at the moment. So it's really, yeah, they're coming from all areas.
Okay, so let's talk about the sort of mortgage side and how people can finance. Many people will finance purchase from their own funds, and as the proceeds of selling their new home from savings, etc. But those who want to take out a mortgage in Spain, how does the Spanish mortgage system differ from what people will be used to in the UK?
It's not hugely different. Banks are banks at the end of the day. They want to check that you're solvent, shall I say? And all banks want to lend money, but they also want to check that you are safe to lend that money to. Spanish banks are stricter than the UK banks, although I don't have much experience with the UK banks over the last 10 years or so. So I'm talking from past experience there. But yeah, basically they will want to see that you have got regular income coming through, or that you do have a large deposit in order to put down. But yeah, it's a case of just proving that you are solvent in order to give them reason to want to lend the money to. The way that they want to lend the money is they will want to see that the house has got a good valuation on it first before they will give you the offer of the mortgage.
Okay, and what are the sort of loan to value or sort of earnings requirements over here?
So you can get, as non-residents, which most of the clients that come over are initially, non-residents, the maximum really that you can go for is a 70% loan to value. So 30% deposit, 70% max loan. It's quite rare though to get the 70%, I'm not going to lie. However, that tends to be the maximum. In very, very rare cases, you'll get 80, but I haven't seen one of those in the last 3 or 4 years. It's quite difficult. The most that we've seen recently are 50 to 60%. So you do really have to push that, and they will loan up to the age of 75 years of age. Okay, so that's quite good, and they will base it on your pension income that's coming through as well. And any rental income that you have coming through on that as well, stock shares, things like that.
And so does it work on an earnings multiple or the percentage of your income, or how do they...
So what they tend to do, and this is a very broad base, everything's individual, but as it tends to be on your net income, they'd like to see the repayment on the mortgage as being no more than 30% of your net income.
Right. Okay.
I could do a rough average, a rough guide.
Okay. And is it possible to get a mortgage in the UK to buy a Spanish property?
Yeah, there are mortgage lenders. I should lay off the source, I think. There are mortgage lenders that will, UK-based mortgage lenders that will lend on overseas properties. So I'm sure you've got contacts yourself, Nigel, and I've got contacts. We can put you in contact with mortgage brokers that will deal with that for you. But again, they will want to do tasaciones, which are valuations on the property over here through a Bank of Spain valuer in order to get that accredited.
Okay, and do you have to have a Spanish bank account before you get a Spanish mortgage?
No. So you do have to, you have to have a bank account from the bank that is lending you the money for the mortgage. So it could be, if you're having a mortgage on a property that's in Spain, but the mortgage is in a UK or an international bank, then your bank account has to be from that bank, wherever that bank is based. 99% of the time it's a Spanish bank because it's a Spanish mortgage, but you don't have to have that bank account opened in that bank prior to applying for that mortgage. Yeah, that's a simple fix. You open that bank account at the time, and it's a mortgage bank account that's opened.
Okay, and when you're sort of going in to look at properties, it's obviously very useful to know how much you've got to spend, and that includes the mortgage. Will they generally give us sort of approval in principle and give you an idea of what?
Yeah. Most of the banks, they tend to struggle with this idea. In the UK, it's very easy to get a rough idea of what you would be able to borrow. And the Spanish banks tend to struggle with this concept of giving you a mortgage in principle. So what we do is put you in contact with a mortgage broker in that case, because there are brokerages over here that are able to work with the banks at the higher levels in order to get that mortgage in principle offer out there for you. In order to do that, though, they will offer you a free consultation first off, but then they'll probably charge for that service. So it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other if you want to go down that route. The advantages of that, though, are that if you're working with a broker, that they have their feelers out into all of the different banks. So you'll get multiple offers from multiple banks rather than going to one bank at a time to the different bank managers. So mortgage brokers tend to have different deals available with different banks at different times. So they have the finger on the pulse.
Yeah. Okay. So a number of people, quite a large proportion of people that are registered for the webinars are coming here to retire, and therefore, will be higher in the age range, as I. I was just, you said that they will lend up to age 75. And if you're over 60, is it reasonably straightforward to get a mortgage?
Yeah, I've done quite a few mortgages for people over the age of 60. It just means, depends on the deposit that you've got. Often, if people are coming over to retire, it tends 90% of the time they've sold their home in the home country, so they tend to have a higher deposit to put down anyway, and it's only a smaller top-up mortgage in order to secure what they need. And a lot of the time, it just tends to be they want that mortgage in order to do some remedial works on the property, because especially in the area that I live in, there's not a lot of new build property here. The property here tends to be more well established. Sorry, there's my dog in the background lying in front of the fire. It's a horrible day here. So there tends to be a lot of remedial work needing doing to bring the properties up to date a bit, because they're old bathrooms or old kitchens. So they just want that money to do it up. So it's easier to get the mortgage than a loan, because obviously the terms are much better.
Okay, yes. And we've had a question here, which perhaps relates to the first part, which is there a best time of the year to buy in Spain?
Not really. Well, previously I would have said yes, because when it was a buyer's market, it's always either now before the summer season kicks in, because especially along the costas, if the property hasn't sold and it's been on the market for a while, the owners used to put it on the market for summer rentals because they would get quite a bit of money in on the holiday market. Or it would have been coming up towards the end of the year, because again, before they put it on the market for the summer and take bookings for the summer. But now, as it's a seller's market, it's at any time. You just need to have your feet on the ground and or have a property finder or somebody there that's, can go out and film it for you as and when, so that you can be in the right place at the right time. Yeah.
Okay, and perhaps I'll just quickly cover foreign exchange, because many people will be offering on a home. The cost will be in euros, and they'll be funding the purchase in sterling, and obviously that gives rise to an exchange risk. The exchange rate may move before you finish the purchase, or if you pay a mortgage and you've got UK funds paying a euro mortgage, you have an ongoing risk. And that is something that I think people need to be very careful of and think about. There are things like forward contracts, there's sort of hedging strategies, but in order to do that, we would certainly recommend that they use a foreign exchange broker, and foreign exchange brokers obviously a lot better than the banks in terms of the cost quite often on this.
We always recommend that as well. It's much safer, and you're just saving money. You're saving money. I'm all about saving fees. and saving money on anything like that, because you know yourself, Nigel, when you're using the banks and you're using the big boys, there's fees everywhere constantly, and they're just taking money from you from all corners. So using the money exchange companies, your money is secure and you're just saving the big hidden fees everywhere. So it's much better to use these companies.
Yes, they also tend to have a narrower spread across the from the central, current exchange rate. So there are several advantages. It's not universally the case. In some cases it may be better to use bank, but certainly that is the general advice. Not that we give financial advice, of course, but
no.
So
it's interesting at the moment, because something to keep your eye on at the moment with regards to the properties, and what we're actually going through right as we speak, is the issue with Russia. In the area that we're in, there was especially in Altea, which is one of the areas that we cover, the Russians bought quite a bit of property in Altea. So at the moment, Spain has a blanket embargo on all non-resident Russian bank accounts. So a lot of the properties that are owned by Russians, they can't access their bank accounts. So we had a couple of properties that are being purchased, that the vendors are Russian. Now, those properties at the moment, they can't purchase them because they can't deposit the money into a Spanish, the owner is, even though they're in Russia and their bank account is in here in Spain, our buyers can't put the money into the Spanish bank account. And it turns out that they can put the money into Currencies Direct, for example, which is a Forex company. They can purchase the money there. They can use a banker's draft and put it into the Russian owner's Currencies Direct account. So they can still do the purchase that way. And then the Currencies Direct can transfer it to dollars, funnily enough, because dollars are still trading with Russia, and transfer it to the Russian person's bank account that way. So
all very complicated at the moment.
It is complicated, but still things can go ahead. So,
okay. So, having found the property, you've got your mortgage, and you're ready to make an offer. What happens next? What's the sort of process in terms of moving forward with the purchase?
The way that the property purchase process works in Spain is you find a nice property, and the first point that you have to do is take the property off open sale. The way that happens is you put a nominal sum down, which is called a reserva, which is a reservation fee. That tends to be between 3,000 and 5,000 euros. If it's a new development, it can be anything between 10,000 and 15,000 euros, depending on what the developer requests. But if it's a resale, it tends to be between 3,000 and 5,000, depending on the price of the property. So yes, in the case we're talking about here, we'll just say it's 3,000 euros. So you sign a very brief reservation contract. Now, it could have some dates in it, but don't get scared off about dates at this stage, because it's not so much a legally binding contract. It's just for notification. So we're going to try and aim for these dates. Your solicitor, which at this point we will take on, will rectify these dates and change these dates to suit. But this is just to say, okay, we're going to take this, we're going to reserve this contract, this property, we're going to take it from sale, then we're going to pay this money over to show that we're serious. That money is held by the estate agent, okay, in 9 times out of 10. The estate agent should not be paying that to the owner at that stage. Now, in my case, if you're using me as a property finder, and I always make sure of this, then it's always held with the estate agent, or at 9 times out of 10, we'll try and hold it that it's in my account, and I'll show a justificante, it's called, so a proof of payment that it's come to my account, and I'll hold on for that as long as I can without handing it over to anybody else, just to give us enough time to do the conveyancing side of thing, which is when we take on a solicitor. And at that point, the solicitor will do all of the searches on the property. And that's pretty much the same as what you would do in the UK. So doing all the searches to find out that the property is registered correctly in the land registry, that all of the size of the property is registered correctly, because there's been many times that people have added on a little extension, or they've added on, I don't know, a pool, or a bit like in the UK, people did loft conversions and they didn't register it properly with the town hall, etc. So it's exactly the same. And you'll hear the words illegal bandied about quite often, and that's not really the terminology that should be used. It's just unregistered. These things can be rectified very, very quickly and very, very simply, 99% of the time. So don't panic. It just means we need to get it done before you purchase the property. All right. But the solicitor will make sure that all of that is done. It also means that we look at what the classification of the land that the house is built on is. So there's different types of variations of land. You've got rustic land, you've got urbanized land, you've got protected land, lots of different classifications. And we need to look at those because when I mentioned earlier, we look at what your aim is for your property. And if one of those things is for renting that property out for tourist purposes, it's very important because depending on the classification of the land depends on whether you'll be able to do that. During that time as well, we'll speak to the town hall and we'll get what's called a certificate of non-conformity or of conformity. We'll also get all these other different types of certificates that we need to apply for to make sure that the town hall has got no embargoes on the property. The town hall has got no problem with getting any types of tourist license for that property. So there's lots of things to be done within that 3 to 4 weeks time frame that we're buying with that 3,000 reserver. Okay, during that time, the solicitor will have gathered all those things and we'll all have a look at it together to make sure we're happy that we're going ahead and that we've got everything together to enable us to go ahead and you will get the outcome you want from that property. The solicitor will put in writing that he is happy or she is happy and will say, I think that, or I'm happy for you to proceed with the property purchase. They will then draw a contractor de arras. It's called ARRAS, arras. That is the exchange contract. And at that point, that's when you are putting down 10% of the property value, minus the 3,000 that you've already done. And it is that point that purchase becomes legally binding. All right. Now, at that moment, if you fail to go ahead with that sale, you will lose that full 10% of the property of the money that you put down. If the seller pulls out at that point onwards, not only do they have to return that 10%, but they have to also compensate you a further 10%. All right. So it's a really good system and stops the gazumping and people coming in and doing higher offers, especially in a market like it is at the moment. So it's a really good system. In that contract or the arras, in that arras contract, they also put in the date by which the completion must take place. And that's a really important date as well, because if it's failed to done by then without an agreement between both parties, so an addendum to that contract, then again, they have to compensate you. So it's a very well managed process, well managed sales process. I really like working in this system. I have to be honest. It's very well managed. So it's a very good system to work with.
Okay, so generally you would recommend using an independent lawyer, would you?
100%. Yeah, 100%. I mean, in my office, I have a lady in my office, Emma, who she's qualified in conveyancing and she's qualified also in auctions and things like that. But we still use an independent lawyer just to oversee everything else. I mean, we can do all the paperwork and we quite often do all the paperwork, but we still also use an independent lawyer because an independent lawyer, they have the payment into the bar. You know, they have the oh gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? Where they're part of the legal system. So they have a duty to protect you, and you have come back against them.
Yeah, a fiduciary duty.
Yeah. So, you know, for me, that's vitally important. And believe you me, in all the years I've been doing this, I've seen good solicitors, I've seen bad solicitors all over the costas. So I do know who's good, who's bad, and who's indifferent. And there are some, not dodgy solicitors, I'm not going to say that because that's not the right word at all, but there are some lazy solicitors that will not pull up the right things for you. And I'll see on the forums, people will recommend solicitors, and that's great, but you don't know you've had a bad solicitor until you come to sell your house that you've already bought. because it's only at that point you'll realize that you didn't have the correct certification in the first place and you need to now find more certification in order to sell your house. So that's where I come in, because I'm making sure that they're doing the job.
Yes, I don't want to make these things sound like horror stories or whatever, because they're rare, but I do have heard stories of people where the buyer has used the seller's, the vendor's solicitor recommended, and it turned out the two would work in cohorts and so on.
Yeah.
Now that's the sort of thing nobody would do in the UK, but suddenly when you come to Spain, you think, well, if that's what they think is normal, then it's not. It's not normal. It's you always have an independent lawyer.
Absolutely, and I see that still happening over here all the time, and it's also, if a solicitor is happy to work for both the buyer and the seller, you should walk away immediately, because that's a conflict of interest. That shouldn't be happening at all. And I also see quite often on the forums, people will also say, never use the solicitor recommended by the agent. And again, that's wrong, because if the agent's good, at the end of the day, people will refer to me as an agent, and I'm not strictly an agent, but I will always say use the solicitor that's recommended by me, because I've done my homework and I know the good and the bad. So, if the agent is good and they're recommending a solicitor, it's for a reason, because they're a good solicitor. So, not everybody who's on the forums is correct.
Agreed. But I mean, I think the one thing I would say, Jan, is that you work exclusively for the purchaser. There are occasions where the estate agent is working, obviously, for the developer, and then again there can be a conflict of interest there. So it can be worked.
It's a minefield out there. That's basically, just stick with me. That's basically what we should say.
But also, I think if in doubt, it's just find a solicitor for yourself. There's plenty of ways of doing so.
Yeah, that's exactly.
So then we've got one of the things that people often talk about is the power of attorney. People often ask to give a power of attorney. How does that work in Spain, and what's the advantages?
Okay, so same thing again. The power of attorney is it's not necessary unless you're not going to be here all the time. So I quite often do a lot of the road shows in the UK. So property road shows and stuff, where I meet people all the time. And there's lots of solicitors on different stands, getting people to sign up there and then and say, oh, give me the power of attorney now and I'll handle it all for you. You don't need to do that. If you're planning on coming over and you're planning on doing the full journey and sitting in the notary and purchasing the property, etc., then there's absolutely no need to hand over your power of attorney to anybody. If, however, you're only going to be coming over sporadically and you're going to struggle for work reasons or whatever reasons, then hand your power of attorney over to somebody that you trust. So I have power of attorney for quite a few of my clients, and I'll sit there and I'll sign on their behalf. Some people give the power of attorney to solicitors. It's entirely fine to do so. Make sure that your power of attorney, if it's to purchase the property on your behalf, make sure that it has an expiry date on it, because you don't want one that's just ad infinitum. Because, I'm not saying that anybody ever would, but you never know what's around the corner. Somebody could go out and buy a property on your behalf that you've forgotten about or something. You never know. But yeah, power of attorney just simply allows somebody to, depends what's in it, but I get power of attorneys all the time in order to go and get the NIE number or the digital signature. If we're managing a property on somebody's behalf and looking after it for them when they're in the UK or wherever, we tend to have the power of attorney so that we can sort out the utility bills for them, on an ongoing basis, and act on their behalf for them so that they're not getting bothered while they're in the home countries. So yeah, power of attorneys are something that's very normal when you are not in the country on a permanent basis. So you give that power to somebody in order that they can act on your behalf.
Okay, and something, again, probably not seen in the UK in the same way, is the notary. Could you perhaps just explain how the role of the notary when buying a property?
Yeah, so notary is a legal person. They're a little bit like a solicitor, but they are more acting on behalf of the government, really, and they are a legal pair of eyes and ears. So a legal witness, really. So everything that happens in Spain is witnessed by the notary. So if you buy a car, or if you open a not a bank account, if you take a loan out, or an overdraft, or a mortgage, or if you purchase a property, then everything is witnessed by the notary. So when you buy your house, you do this contracto de arras, like I mentioned earlier, which is the exchange of contracts. And then at the date of completion, it's a very civil affair. Yourself and the buyers, along with your representatives, your solicitors, will go to the chosen notary. And as the buyer, you can choose which notary to attend, which tends to be the one in the town that you're purchasing the property. And it will be a set date and time. And you'll turn up there around the round table, and the notary will sit down and he will read out what's in the contracto de arras. Now, in the area that we work in, it tends to be in Spanish and English that he will read it out. I'm referring to he all the time because I've got my notary in my head that we go to nearly all the time, and it happens to be a bloke. So he will read it out in Spanish and English because there's a lot of English-speaking clients over here, and by that I mean Dutch, Belgium, Norwegian, all nationalities. And yeah, it's a very, very civil affair. And then he will witness and sign every single page, and he will ask you both, the seller and the buyer, to confirm and nod that you agree with everything that's written in that contract. And that's it. He's a witness to say you are of sound mind and you agree to what's in that contract. And that is what the notary is there for. So when you see on the forums, don't worry with the solicitor, you don't need the solicitor because the notary will do it. The notary is not there to advise you that that's not correct. He will say, are you sure about this? But he won't tell you if that it's completely wrong. He will say, are you sure about this? But he's not your legal advisor. You haven't paid him for that. So just be aware of that. You can pay him for that, but you haven't in that situation.
Right, okay. Another thing that comes up is surveys. Is it normal practice to have a survey in Spain, and would you recommend?
Yeah. So it's not normal practice, but it is something that I personally always recommend, 100%. Not so much on new builds or in apartment complexes, it's a little bit different. But if it's in a villa or in a finca, then we always get a survey done. It's very difficult to get the seller to understand that the offer is subject to survey, unless it's a structural, unless it's a severe structural survey. But we always say have the survey done, because the surveyor that we use is an English guy actually, who is RICS registered in the UK, but also part of the Colegio of surveyors in Spain as well. So he's dual registered. And what he does is teaches you the difference between how a house lives and breathes in the UK to Spain. So he's very good at explaining the differences between damp proofing, for example, or what types of paint to use. So it's more for your own learning journey than anything else. And then you also do have that peace of mind that there's no underpinning issues or major roof issues or anything like that. A price of a survey over here it's not brilliant. It's not massively prohibitive. Probably for a walk around inspection for a 3-bedroom villa, for example, would probably be in the region of 400 to 700 euros, dependent on the actual size of the property. And it would be done with a GoPro. So it's all done on video, so you can save it rather than having a big written report. So it's much easier. And it's all in English as well, which is easier.
Right, okay. And so what are the costs beyond the purchase price that people need to allow for? Are there agency fees? Who pays them? What other fees are there?
It's worth bearing in mind when you are looking at properties in Spain that the agency fees are quite high, but they are built into the sale price of the property. But bearing in mind, that will depend on whereabouts in Spain that you are. So if it's a new build property and it's a development, then commissions can be anywhere from 5% to 16 to 20%, dependent on the development. So they can be really high. So when you see these free inspection trips, come on out and we'll pay for your flights for £99 and we'll put you up in a nice 4-star, 5-star hotel and things like that, then you've got to think where that money is coming from and where that trip is coming from and who's actually paying for that. And you are paying for that. It's in the commissions that are being paid by that developer, which are extremely high. And if the house is only 199,000 or 150,000, then that tells you that that's a cheap build, cheap land, cheap properties, it's cheap. And there's a reason it's cheap. It's being done on the cheap, and they're doing lots and lots and lots and lots and lots, and they're never going to rise in value. So I'm very, very wary of those type. You'll probably never find me ever advising you to buy something on developments like that. So I'm quite anti that type of thing, I've got to say. And then on the other hand, you're going to find other properties out there, resale and things, they will work between 2.5% to 5%, in some cases 6%, even in some cases that push 7% commissions. So some of the larger estate agency chains like Engel and Volkers, you may have heard of, which tend to be more luxury. They're like the big German franchise chains. They charge 6%. But they're included in the sale price. So again, it's much higher than what you're used to in the UK at 1% and 2% maybe in London, etc. So that it's a lot higher. But then you've got to think, well, okay, it's not a local market that you're selling to here. It's a very international market. So the costs are a lot higher, and the staffing, you've got lots of different staff to take on speaking different languages, etc., etc. So it's a very different market. That's included in the sale price. Your other things that you need to take into consideration when you are looking at properties is that once you've looked at a property, you then need to add on roughly about 10% purchase tax. All right. Now that's what it is for the Comunidad Valenciana, the Valencian community, which is where I'm based. Other areas of Spain have different purchase taxes, so you need to investigate that wherever it is that you're looking at. But as a rule, around 10%. Okay. Then you also have lawyers' fees, notary fees, land registry fees. So as a rule, I always say add 15% on top of the price of the property that you're looking at. And that will cover every single fee imaginable. And you will always, always, always have money left over for removals, for some type of furniture, curtains, some beds, whatever it is. If you stick to the 15% rule, you will always, always have money left over. If you don't, you may come unstuck. 13%, you'll always have money left over, but I always like to overestimate. Okay. Not that my husband will ever believe me on that one, but yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to renting, because so many people have been talking about renting before they buy. And how does the rental market in Spain sort of again compare with the UK? How good is it, so to speak? How easy is it to find somewhere to rent?
Well, I hear it's quite tough in the UK at the moment as well, because it's certainly tough here. The rental market is always bonkers along the coast. It depends what you're after. Okay, it's the demand outstrips supply always. Especially along the costas, it always will. People will always want to be down the coast. It's a very transient population. People want the sun. People want to come out for the summer months, and that's just impossible because people want to rent their properties out for the summer months for the summer money, which is the summer rentals. I don't know, it's a difficult one, the rental market, because everything on paper is weighted towards the tenant, but in reality, it's weighted towards the landlord. So it's always a difficult one to try and traverse. In the cities, it's slightly different. But, well, yeah, that's changing now as well, I'm afraid. So if you go further inland, it's easier. But certainly around here, we do struggle. I'm not going to lie with rentals. If you want a rental, then it's always better, especially if you want to try before you buy, then stick to a 3-month or a 6-month rental and come out from September, October onwards and do the winter rental. Because if you're trying to do a rental throughout summer, then it's difficult. Your best bet is to September, October time start, or maybe August time start looking to secure one from October onwards. Do one for 6 months and then plead with the owners whilst you're in that first 3 months to extend it for the year, because you've got more of a chance of being able to do that during that time.
Yeah, I mean, I personally rent rather than have bought, and you know, I can agree with Joanne that it can be difficult to find property, particularly in areas such as Javier and so on, where people want to let their properties out in the summer. And we have a neighbour who has a rental property, and their property is rented all the way through to the winter next year. I have friends who are looking for property over winter rentals, and a lot of them are being advertised for 2023-24 rather than for 22-23. Now, they will come on, and there are generally some unfurnished properties. Some people prefer to go for the long-term rental, but it can be difficult to find. But coming back to the point about the system and how it works for the tenant, there's a lot of confusion about the rules, but there's basically only 2 types of rental agreement. One is a short-term tourist agreement, which is basically if you're there for holiday purposes, and it's up to sort of 3 months. And then there's a long-term rental. One of the things you'll hear a lot of is the 11-month rental, and there's no such thing. Basically, people feel that if they say 11 months rather than 12 months, they don't become subject to the 12 months rule, the long-term rental rules. That doesn't work. The actual rules are that if you are having the property for the purposes of long-term living there, then it's a long-term rental. It doesn't matter what the length of the tenancy is. And once you've got that long-term rental, the law means that the landlord has to renew each year for 5 years. So you can, once you've got the place, it's yours for 5 years. Now, there are occasions where they can get it back, but they are in theory limited, and I'm sure that in practice, if a landlord wants it back, he'll get it back. But the rule is that they need to have it for their own purposes, so they need a family member to live there or things like that. But, as with most of these things, you can find a reason with a good lawyer to get your property back if you want it. But then you get 2 months notice and so on. Yeah. So it is a reasonable position. So it works quite well, provided you can find a property. There are unfurnished properties, but much more of them are furnished because they tend to be something that somebody couldn't sell, and therefore they've got all the furniture they had for it as a tourist rental, and they have no use of it back in the UK, so they leave it furnished and so on. But you can get them unfurnished, and we have had unfurnished properties. So that's the thing on the rental. Is there anything you'd like to add there?
Say again, sorry?
Anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, just that they are so few and far between. They're becoming like hen's teeth. And it's shown in, if you go on any of the websites and the forums, the Facebook sites for rentals, you'll see as and when a long-term rental becomes available, the amount of people that jump on it, can I see it, can I see it, can I see it? And it's gone within minutes, if not hours. It's practically, it's more about who you know, not what you know. So when it comes to rentals, you have to be on the ground to get it. So it's very, very difficult these days to get them, but not impossible. That's the thing. If we're looking for a rental for somebody, it's a case of we send messages out to all of our clients that have houses. Is anyone prepared to rent one out for 6 months or something? We have clients that want to try before they buy, So it's that type of thing. And then also I have children at school here. So do lots of people on my team. We send WhatsApp messages out to the schools and saying, has anybody got any houses? Because the Spanish tend to own 2 or 3 houses. Has anybody got any tenants that are about to move out? We have somebody looking, and it's really is a case of getting in and seeing if anything. It's more luck than design. It really is. Right place, right time. And then if you are looking at moving out, you have to have trust in your property finder at that point. because we're out with a camera, we go straight round there, we film it, and you have to be ready to put that deposit down just through the lens, because unless you're over here already, you have to reserve it. You can't say, oh, I'll be out in June next year. Can you save it for me? Because it just doesn't happen.
Yes, well, when we first came out, we had a series of properties we were due to view, and I think probably about 20 to 30% of them were not available when we came a week later. So, you know, it's not new, so to speak. It's always like that. So, got a question here, which I'm uncertain whether what experience you have with this, but they say that they are looking to come and buy, but they have the chance to rent before they rent to buy. And is that something that is common here? Is it to be avoided, or can it work quite well?
Yeah, there's it's happened a few times. It's not a massive thing over here. We've been involved in one or two, and what I would say on that is you need to be very, very careful with the contract that's written up. The solicitor that you use needs to go over the contract and draw it with a very fine tooth comb, because there are a lot of pitfalls with the rent to buy contracts. So make sure that you are using a solicitor that's very experienced in the rent to buy contract. But it's not impossible. Some of the banks do rent to buy contracts on the bank stock that they have. But if it's just a little contract between you and another, between yourselves, then I would say steer clear completely and make sure that you get a professional in to draw that contract up, because it is open to a lot of problems if you don't get the right contract drawn up. We were involved with one not long ago on that, and it was very, very convoluted. We got it in the end, but it took a lot of work.
Okay. So for people who are buying property in order to rent them out, they need to get a tourist license. And how easy is it to get a tourist license? Does that vary around the country?
Yeah, it depends where you are in the country. For example, in Valencia, there are specific criteria. You have to have certain size bedrooms there. You can't have gas in the house. You have to, like the cooker has to be a electric cooker or an induction, for example. There's like a gold, platinum, bronze, silver type of category that you go for. You cannot advertise a property anywhere online unless you have a tourist license number, and if you're caught, and they do look, so if you are caught, then there's very hefty fines. If you're in Palma or if you're in Barcelona, then they're not giving out tourist licenses at the moment. So that's something to bear in mind. If you want, that's the Balearic Islands, sorry, or Barcelona area. Or Catalonia. So if you're in down south in Andalusia region, you have to have air conditioning throughout the whole property, otherwise they won't give out the licensing, whereas in this area you have to have air conditioning in the bedrooms. So there's certain things and criteria that you have to adhere to. Again, the classification of the land comes into it, and the size of the land as well. So there's lots of things that we need to look into. The actual obtaining of the license is relatively simple, provided that we tick off all the boxes. And it is our own declaration that we adhere to these things, that they accept. And then once you get the license, and we get the certificate from the town hall to say that the town hall, it's a certificate of conformity that we have to get from the town hall. Once we've got that, then actually getting the license is quite simple. It takes, in our area, it takes about 5 to 6 weeks at the moment. That tends to go, don't hold me to that, because that tends to come and go, Spanish bureaucracy. But once we get that, we can then start advertising the property online. And once you do get that, you have to register that property with your local Guardia Civil office. And then every time you have clients, you also have to register those clients. You get an app, and you have to register those clients every time you get them to stay in that property. That's law. So if you don't adhere to that as well, you get big fines. And there's many, many people that are not doing that. And that's going to come back and bite people on the bum at some point. So there's lots of pitfalls that people, don't really understand what they're doing. And this is where we come in. We're here to guide you through that and make sure that everything's right all the time.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. There don't seem to be any further questions, so thank you, Joanne. We'll end it there. Just to finish off by thanking you all for listening. As I said before, we're here to help you with your move to Spain. So if you have any questions or you'd like to refer to Joanne or to anybody else within our network of service providers, please don't hesitate to contact us on expats@expatnetwork.com. For those of you who are ready to make the move, you might want to look on our website at our discovery tours. You'll find details on the website, expatnetwork.com, under the events, and you will see that what we're offering are tailored tours. So the likes of Joanne will be in touch with you, discuss exactly what you're looking for, and then take you around. Now, initially, we're probably not talking about finding the right property. We're talking about those tours, getting you to understand the different areas. Now, I mean, like, you take somewhere like Javier, there are all sorts of different areas, and even if you've been on holiday here many times before, you may not understand some of the nuances that Joanne was talking about earlier about particular areas, and this will give you an idea of what the advantages and disadvantages are of the different areas. There's no obligation to deal with the person that takes you on that tour, but obviously they do want to sell you property, and if you do want to buy through them, then you'll agree those terms with them individually. But what we're trying to do is make sure that we're finding the right partners, so not the sort of people that Joanne was talking about earlier, who will take you off the plane, keep you 100% of the time, and sell you the thing they get the biggest commission for, rather than the property that's right for you. So that's something that you can consider if you're looking here. And as I say,
have a carver with us instead, and get to have time with us instead.
Indeed, there could be nothing better, Joanne. So thank you all for joining us. Many thanks, Joanne, and we'll call it end there. Thank you very much.
Nice to see you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.